it just felt like this moment of quiet, silent, and powerful protest.
Dana, hi.
Laura, hello.
It's so good to see you. And we got the black t-shirt memo,
Yeah,
you and
there we
I.
go.
Mine is oversized. It's for my son's business. You can see it says 444 on the back.
Love it.
That's his catering company.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
And you were speaking to me from
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yes.
Yes. And this ties into the piece that you wrote, which is it called The Erosion of Stone or Erosion of Stone?
Yeah, The Erosion of Stone.
So tell me about that piece. What inspired you to write it?
So when the rallies were happening in Charlottesville, now over 3 years or almost 3 years ago, I was, no, it was 4 years
4 years
ago.
ago, yeah.
4 years
I
ago.
forget 2020 all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
It's like the year that didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I was pregnant with my daughter. I
Mhm.
was 17 weeks and I saw her as I was laying on the couch with my shades drawn because I live about a mile away from the statue. And I just I wanted to block out everything that was going on around me, everyone who was descending upon our town, and rising up from within it. And I saw her for the very first time kicking in these rhythmic pulses down by my hip.
Mm.
And, she was my first. And it was just this really amazing experience. And I called my husband over and we were sitting watching as she was kicking down by my hip. And I was like, oh, she's a fighter, she's a feisty one already. And, being Jewish and living here in Charlottesville, the night before, having gathered with some Jewish friends as, the neo-Nazis were marching, down at the university, it just felt like this moment of quiet, silent, and powerful protest
Mhm.
in my body.
Yeah. Were you scared?
I was nervous for our town. I
Yeah.
was nervous for people I love who were protesting, counter protesting rather.
Mhm.
I was feeling just very raw, because the year before I had just been to Buchenwald to relive my grandfather's Holocaust survival story.
Yes.
And I don't know that I was personally feeling scared, although it was very alarming to see the helicopter over our backyard, with, the National Guard called in, which then crashed later,
Mm.
that afternoon, which wasn't really discussed all that much, honestly, in the media.
I don't think I even knew that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there was a fatality too with it. I could be
Mm.
wrong, but I could be misremembering at this point. When you have two kids,
Yes.
everything else kind of goes out the window. But
Yeah.
it was all very, very surreal,
Mhm.
because it was all happening right around my house, basically. I mean, it was happening in my backyard.
Yeah. Wow. And so that's what it felt like then with being pregnant with your daughter and experiencing that in 2016, right? That's when that happened in 2016,
It was 2017,
2017.
the rallies. Yeah.
And then, so fast forward to now, tell me kind of what's going on in your life and what's going on with how you're thinking about that piece you wrote and where you live.
I don't think about it much differently. To me, it feels like no time has passed. I
Mhm.
mean, you know it as well as I do. When you have two young kids, time just kind of stops. I'll say something was 3 years ago, and actually it was 6 years ago, just
Yeah,
because there's this bubble of time that doesn't exist anymore once you have kids.
totally.
And so that history was very, very recent to me. I
Mhm.
think what I am feeling now is much more hopeful, given our change of administration and our change in response to matters such as these. And the fact that our administration is taking these issues much more seriously,
Mhm.
um, compared to an administration that didn't regard them whatsoever, as anything noteworthy. So what I'm feeling now is a sense of hope, a
Mhm.
sense of greater security for sure, and really a sense of belonging. I
Mhm.
always got the sense while it was happening that it was largely people from outside of my town and outside of my state who were descending upon Charlottesville. But the
Yeah.
reality is that, you know, the alt-right leaders were, you know, from the University of Virginia. So
Oh,
we can't disregard the fact that, you know, a lot of the protesters were born and bred right here in our backyard.
right.
Um, and that I think is something that still is disheartening,
Mhm.
to say the least. And I think that the more, you know, I mean, during election season, though, the number of Biden Harris posters and flyers and stickers and everything around town, it was just really, really positive.
Like a sea of
Um,
blue.
yeah, a
Yeah.
sea of blue for sure. So yeah, a sense of belonging, a sense of security, a sense of hope. I
Yeah.
think that's what I feel. And I think that that's really what came through in the piece too, is just
Yes.
sense of perseverance
Mhm.
too,
Yeah.
through a lineage.
And then you also mentioned that the statue's coming down
It
of
is.
Robert E. Lee, yes?
So 3 weeks ago, our city council voted unanimously to take it down. There were a lot of legal hurdles over the years that we needed to overcome, because Virginia is a really interesting state when it comes to our historical monuments compared to some other places that were able to just really quickly and readily take statues down after the rallies happened. We were not. But not only are they taking the statue of Robert E. Lee down, but they are also taking a neighboring statue of Stonewall Jackson down. So it's a double win.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to the added security around that time frame. And I'm just interested to see where this goes. Now, it is interesting that they are going to be relocating the statues, and they were accepting bids from different organizations and causes that would be potentially housing these.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So it is not being erased, it is being relocated.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I'll be curious to see where they land. But the other thing is that your children will not pass them on their way to the library.
They will not.
They will
They will
not.
not. And my hope is
Yeah.
that they will pass some Black Lives Matter statues,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
statues of protesters, current day,
Yeah.
that are on the right side of history.
Wouldn't that be something?
It would be. It really
Yeah.
would.
Well, Dana, thank you so much. I love your piece. I'm so grateful that you allowed me to share it with our listeners. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. And then yeah, just check it out now. And then you can also, you'll find a link to Dana's piece in the show notes of the episode and on
Thank
this
you
YouTube
so
channel
much,
too.
Laura. Thank you for having me.
I turn onto Park Street and am reminded of last August. The flag-wielding hate that gathered and the Nazi chants that reverberated across my town, my neighborhood. I'm reminded of being 6 weeks pregnant, of lying on the couch by the front-facing window of my home and watching my daughter, not even the size of my palm, kick her foot in rhythmic pulses down my hip.
It would be 3 more weeks until I learned her sex, but I promised her, we will outlive this. We, as in she and I, and the life she might one day bring into the world. We may carry the surnames of our fathers and husbands, but as the matrilineal bond is deep and endless river, a force uniting daughters of daughters from womb to womb since the beginning of humankind. I look down at her now as she dozes, her eyelids softly closed, her dimpled chin tucked into her shoulder. Adira Malka, I lean in and hum, touching her toes. Strong queen.